right, if you have a Bible this morning, let's turn to book of Zechariah. Zechariah. And Zechariah chapter 5. I thought I'd talk to you a while this morning on UFOs. Zechariah chapter 5. Let me state when I start, I believe if you don't believe in UFOs, you're mentally sick. About 5 million people seen UFOs, and I must have seen about 20 of them. I've never seen a flying saucer, but I've seen many UFOs. And out in Kansas, they see so many of them, they don't even report them anymore. If you want to see some UFOs, go to Texas on a summer night and get you a recliner and lie out there in a rooftop or something in the summer, look straight up, and you'll see all you can stand for a couple of days. And the beaches of Florida, you'll see them too. All right, Zechariah chapter 5, verse 1. I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a flying roll. You say, what's that? I have any idea. It's a flying roll, whatever it is. And he said, what seest thou? And I answered, I see a flying roll. The length thereof is 20 cubits, the breadth thereof is 10 cubits. This is the curse that goeth forth over the face of the whole earth, for every one that stealeth shall be cut off as on this side, according to it, one side of the roll. Everyone that sweareth shall be cut off as that on the other side, according to it. And it will bring forth, and it shall enter the house of the thief, and the house of him that sweareth falsely by my name, and it shall remain in the midst of his house, and shall consume it with the timbers thereof and the stones thereof. And you say, what's that? I haven't got an idea in the world. That's a flying roll that goes through the air and goes in your house and messes your house up. Somebody say, what is it? Beats the fire out of me. It's unidentified. Now, an unidentified flying object doesn't have to be a flying saucer. All it has to do is be an unidentified flying object. That's what that thing is. Now, let's get another one, verse 5. Then the angel that talked with me went forth and said to me, lift up thine eye, see what is this that goeth forth? And I said, what is it? And he said, it's an ephah that goeth forth. And in verse 7, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman that sitteth in the midst of the ephah. And he said, this is wickedness. And he cast in the midst of the ephah, and he cast the weight of the lead upon the mouth thereof. I lifted mine eyes and looked, oh, there came out 2 women, and the wind was in their wings, for they had the wings like the wings of a stork. I lifted up the ephah between the earth and heaven. Then I said to the angel that talked with me, whither do these bear the ephah? And he said to me, to build it a house in the land of Shinar, that it should be established and set there upon one base. You say, what's that? I haven't got an idea in the world what that is. But whatever it is, it goes over your head, and it isn't identified. Now that thing he's talking about there is a thing like this. An ephah is like a bushel basket. And the bushel basket is like this. It's a dry measure weight. And a talent of lead, a weight of lead is put in that thing, and that weight of lead is shaped like a woman. And the woman sits in the ephah. And then the lead is cast over the top of that thing like this, so the woman is covered up. And there come out 2 women with wings like a stork. And these women pick this thing up and carry this thing and set it on its base in Shinar, where Babylon was. And so when you find pictures of angels, you nearly always find pictures of angels like women with the wings of a stork sitting out there, and they pick this thing up and carry this thing. You say, what is that? I have any idea in the world what that is. And that's a UFO. And I know this, whenever they draw angels, they always paint them with long hair and wings from that thing in Zechariah. But those aren't angels. Angels in the Bible are male, and they don't have wings. The Bible says some have entertained angels unawares. Now, if you went to the door like Lot did and opened your door, and there was something there that looked like it was a transvestite standing there with wings on, you wouldn't entertain them unawares. You'd know you had something wild out there. But when he goes and opens the door, there are 2 men there. He entertains angels unawares. Angels are like men. They don't have wings. All right, Ezekiel chapter 1. Now, whatever that thing is, it has wings. Ezekiel chapter 1, here's another one. The Bible has 4 unidentified flying objects in it. And 2 of them are connected with wings. Ezekiel, and none of them are angels. Ezekiel 1:4. Ezekiel 1:4. Now this is the most common one they talk about. I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. And out of the midst thereof was the color of amber, out of the midst of the fire. Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. And everyone had 4 faces, and everyone had 4 wings, and their feet were straight feet, as the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot. Verse 8, they had the hands of a man under their wings, and their 4 sides, and they had 4 faces and the wings. And the wings were joined together, so they turned not when they went everyone straight ahead, or straight forward. As for the likeness of their faces, the 4 had the face of a man, and the face of a lion on the right side, and the 4 had the face of an ox on the left side. The 4 also had the face of an eagle. Verse 15, now as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creature with his 4 faces. Verse 20, whither the Spirit was to go, they went, thither was their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them. For the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. That's a strange thing, isn't it? Verse 16, their appearance and their work was, as it were, of a wheel in the middle of a wheel. When they went upon their 4 sides, and they turned not when they went. As for their rings, they were so high they were dreadful, and the rings were full of eyes round about them 4. You say, what's that? Who knows what it is? I don't know what it is. The thing is giving you like a sled, like a threshing machine, and there's a throne on this threshing machine, and there's a likeness of a man sitting here in this thing like this. And this man sits here on this thing like a threshing machine, and this thing is carried. And this thing has wheels, and it's either a wheel within a wheel like that, the wheel there, and the wheel there like that. But he's sitting on 4 sides, so it is probably a wheel like that and a wheel within a wheel like that, like a gyroscope. But the trouble is, he says the spirit of the creature was in the wheels. But what's the spirit of a creature doing in inorganic material? Wheels. You get all that stuff in the Bible. What you ought to remember about the Bible is always so far ahead of the latest biological scientific department, they'll never catch up, no matter what they do. I mean, the devil is spoken of as having tabrets and pipes, musical instruments, as part of his body, and stones. That's some kind of a genetic connection there, you see. And they're working on that in the labs now, but they never catch up. The Bible's always so far ahead of science, it's hopeless. Oh, and there's a thing like that there, and then these things come out. Whatever these things are, they've got these wings. And they got these 4 sets of wings, and they're carrying this thing. Whatever these things are, they have these 4 different faces that represent the creation. Man, the head of the creation, the lion, the head of the wild creation, the ox, the head of the domestic creation, and the eagle, the head of the flying creation. There's an animal missing. There are 4 cherubs there, and somebody's missing. They got one for the wild animals. They got one for the domestic animals. They got one for the crown of creation. They got one for the flying animals. But something's missing. And what's missing is the amphibians. There's a missing cherub. In Ezekiel chapter 28, he said about the devil, thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. And he's no longer there. So one of those animal representatives is gone. It's the amphibian class. He's missing. Then he says these animals here had straight feet like the sole of a calf's foot, like that. And it's a split hoof, like that, like a calf's foot. Now there are all kinds of things in there. These things have wings, you see. And if amphibian or reptilian class is missing, then you've got that. Some kind of a flying serpent. And if a cherub has a face like an ox, it must have horns. But it's got a feet like that, feet like a calf, then it's a wild-looking thing, whatever that 5th cherub was. And all kinds of things there, like you take a man's leg looks like this, and the knees here, and then the foot's down here, and the ankle, and down there. You take that horse, his knees up there, And then this part of his leg is down here. That thing there, that's his foot. And this thing down here is his toe. And that thing runs on his toes. And his toes are split. That bone there matches this one here. See, and this bone here matches that one there. The foot's there on a horse. Now we talk about that being the feet of the horse, but on a man, that's how that thing is set out. So that horse actually running on his toes. And it's a split hoof. The Japanese wear it this way, with a sandal with a split hoof, so the big toes on one side and the other four on the other side. And the ladies, in order to walk on their toes, get it this way. You see? Something you can't understand. You pick up the King James Bible, and you can always get so far ahead of the pack, they can't run catching up, or can't catch up running. Folks say, back to the Bible, back to the Bible. You never go back to the Bible. You try to catch up with it. All right, now this thing here is talking about unidentified flying objects. History is replete with reference to these things. In Vita Caroli, that's the life of Carol, the life of Carol, Charlemagne the Great, you'll find reference to UFOs. In Bede's Historia Angelicum, the history of the English-speaking people, you'll find reference to UFOs. Alswin's History of France, you'll find reference to UFOs. In the works by Pliny and Plutarch, written back before the time of Christ, they're referred to as balls of fire, fireballs. These are things that show up bright and spin. And the most notable of them is Fatima. Everybody in Portugal went out to see the Fatima, the Virgin Mary, that these Portuguese kids saw. What they saw was a fireball. It's a UFO. Things spin and bright. Columbus, when he comes into San Salvador, he goes right into the Bermuda Triangle without knowing it. He comes right into it, just automatic, just like he's drawn by like a magnet. When he comes into the Bermuda Triangle, he mentions these lights he sees along the shore, and the next day they go by the shore and there ain't no shore there. There's no island there, there's no nothing. He records those lights in his ship's diary. Henry, a play by Shakespeare, I forget if it's Henry the 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th, but that play on Henry has a mention of a UFO in it. John Wesley mentions one in his diary. You get the diary, the journal of John Wesley, you'll find a reference to one coming up out of the water in Scotland and moving out across the land. So it's replete with these things. Now, a UFO, I've never seen a flying saucer, but listen, I've been up in the air longer than a seagull with sore feet. And if you want to get a plane someplace, come with me and I'll put you on it. You don't have to get the booking agent. I'll take you to your plane and put you on it. I practically live in Atlanta. And the years I've been flying up and down the country, I've had time to see all kinds of things out there. And I know when it's a plane, when it's not. I've been out fishing for mullet down in St. Petersburg at 11 o'clock at night with 4 or 5 guys with me, and a nice little light show up on the horizon, go clear across the horizon while you're watching it, take about 12 seconds, and there ain't no green lights, there ain't no red lights, there ain't no blinking lights, there ain't no lemon lights. And there isn't any sound. It just like that. Now that isn't anything that we know anything about. I've had that new plane there. They got some new plane that can get a dead start from someplace and go straight up in the air, you know, and hover and stop and that kind of thing. I heard one of them one night over my house. But I knew what that was. That's a Navy thing they got down there. But you can't explain this. You go out and lie on the beach at night down in Florida and you'll see a light go like this and then stop. It'll sit there. Sometimes you can time that thing 10 minutes and then it'll go like this. Right up with the stars. I don't know how the capsules go in the orbit. You can see the movement. And they always go in the same direction. They're always going west-east, you know, and they, after a while they get beyond the sunlight don't reflect on them, and they go out. I know what I'm looking at. But these things are going at an angle. And you can check the place in the sky and look back and it won't be there. And it won't happen more than once or twice. It'll happen 15, 20, 25 times. Now, out in Texas, you know, the stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. And you get out there, light on your back up there, and you see those things moving around half the night out there. So something's going on. Now, you wouldn't have to convince me about them for a very good reason. And the reason why you wouldn't convince me is because I have to fly planes all year round. I have frequent flyers on Eastern, on Delta, on Piedmont, on U.S. Air, and God knows what. I've got right now accumulation of enough miles to get a free round trip to Hawaii and back. And I'm up those things all the time. And I'll tell you what happens. Up till 1968 or 66, along about in there, when you'd fly, the pilot would never tell you to fasten your seatbelt until you're about 500 feet above the ground, or 1,000 at the most. And boy, about along 1968 somewhere there, you start getting this stuff about, while we are in flight, please keep your seatbelt fastened for your convenience and safety. Well, come on now, man. I flew those things in 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 1960, 61, 62, 63, Piedmont, Allegheny, Mohawk, Lake Central. Some don't even fly anymore now. Texarkana, Braniff, TWA, Southern, Northwest, all that kind of stuff. And listen, till 1968, that fellow wouldn't have you fasten your seatbelt unless you were taken off for landing. But now you get them at jet stream at 32,000 feet, and that nut comes on there and says, keep your seatbelt fastened. Why? There ain't going to be any turbulence. 32, 35,000 feet, that thing is just as smooth as glass, man. You couldn't get a smoother ride in a Greyhound bus. Keep your seatbelt fastened for your convenience. Yeah, I know, convenient stuff. People send me, little bills. Please don't fold, staple, or mutilate for your convenience. I fold them and send them back. I write back and say, in the future, send me the kind that'll fit my envelopes for your convenience, that kind of stuff. Why, listen, you know why they did that? Because somewhere in there in those years, about 4 or 5 airline pilots got people thrown all over them planes, ducking UFOs up there. And people in baggage thrown all over the plane. And they didn't want to be sued. I mean, if you don't believe in UFOs, the people that make money on people, they got more sense than you got. They don't want to get sued for getting pitched around the plane. So now you got to keep your seatbelt fast at 32,000 feet. Something's going wrong. One time down there in Pensacola, I had some earlier at the school. One night, 2 of my students left the school grounds where they're staying in a trailer and drove 4 miles in town and came to my house in a panic. And I said, what is it? They said, there's something wrong out there, Brother Ruckman, something wrong with electricity. Well, I don't know what it was, but they put a power line right behind the school, 666,000 volts, which don't sound exactly encouraging. And I don't trust electricity anywhere. I think it's of the devil, man. And they came there, so the whole field is all electrical, the light bulbs turning on, that are in the cupboard and all that kind of thing. And about that time, bam, man, something like a bomb going off, rattle the windows of the house 5 miles away, and a big old light goes off, and boy, the city starts waking up, and the power plant caught on fire, and the fire goes across the street and burns down half the woods over by the school. And then the report comes out the next day, Gulf Breeze inhabitants say they have seen a UFO. Well, out comes the Navy was a helicopter. There wasn't any helicopter up. Somebody said, well, it was a plane crash. No, there wasn't any plane crashing there. And boy, last year, some guy down at Gulf Breeze photographed a UFO in color for 25 minutes. And that thing's on TV. You couldn't miss it. You couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a bunch of bananas. That thing runs 25 minutes. Well, that thing taking off and moving and going up and going down and coming close and far away. And the background behind it is Gulf Breeze, and it's just as authenticated as any picture you ever took of your family. So I believe in them. I believe they're there. I think they fool with electricity and water, if I understand things right. If I understand things right, they have an affinity for sulfur. And that's suspicious, because sulfur doesn't come from upstairs. Sulfur comes from downstairs. Those fellows in the book of Revelation that come out have breaststones of breastplates of brimstone and jacinth. And brimstone is sulfur. It's hydrogen sulfide. Sulfur is some funny stuff. When you work that stuff and get a Bunsen burner and turn it to sulfur flame, you can get a lake of fire in outer darkness. You understand? That sulfur burns, doesn't put any light. If you had a lake of fire of sulfur, you couldn't see it, but it'd burn you. Well, anyway, these things are found throughout history, and they're documented. And whenever Hollywood makes a documentation on them, it's always, second, third class encounters and all this bunk. Fairy story about E.T. or P.U. or whatever his name is, and all this stuff, and these little kiddies see him, and the spook stories, and then when they get documented, somebody saw when they're hanging washed out in the line, all that kind of bunk. Listen. Those things have been seen by professional Army, Navy, and Marine aerial spotters, observers. They've been observed more than 100 times by men who've been trained all their life to identify flying objects. Commissioned officers, lieutenant colonels, majors. They've been seen by 17 airline pilots for TWA and National Eastern. And a fellow said they're not there. Well, you're crazy. In a court of law, if you've got 2 or 3 witnesses, eyewitness to a thing, it's there. You don't have to drum up 2 or 3 eyewitnesses for UFOs. You can get a couple of million anytime you're ready. At home, I've got more than 300 photographs of UFOs, counting that 3/4 of them are trick photography. We'll discount 3/4 of them. What's going to do with the rest? Over 100 of them, just authentic as they can be, the things are there, whatever they are. And the question is, what are they and where do they come from? That's the question. Out there in Denver, Colorado, many years back, they have what they call the Condon Report, or the Blue Book Report. And in Denver, Colorado, back there about 20 years ago, they had this Professor Condon, a typical harebrained idiot, get up there and make this big investigation of UFOs, government-sponsored project. When he got through, they published a Blue Book on it, where they came to the conclusion that there wasn't any such thing as UFOs, and everybody saw one as mentally unbalanced. And while they're putting out that book, the Secretary of Navy and the President saw them, which may, really upsets folks bad. Secretary of Navy saw one out of a plane window. Now, the disarming thing about these things, they seem to materialize and dematerialize at will. They seem to have some kind of a way to make themselves invisible. I'll tell you this, they've been shot at, they've been chased, they've been collided with, they've been picked up in radar, and down at Tampa, up in the control tower, they watched them for an hour and a half. There's any question about the things being there. If you don't believe they're there, you're out of your mind. I mean, the guys up in the control tower just watched them an hour and a half around the airport, and they get chased, and they've been collided with, and the plane blown all to smithereens. I've got a photograph taken by a couple of those astronauts going around the globe, one of them capsules, photographed, and here's one trailing them the whole way, right underneath them. And that thing was shown on national television. Everybody wanted to know what it was, and they came up with all kinds of cockeyed answers. A weather balloon, No, man. A weather balloon doesn't follow something around the earth, at 400 miles a minute. It doesn't work that way. And they've tried every way in the world to get rid of this stuff, and the last report was from Russia. And the last report from Russia about 2 months ago was they got out of the UFOs and walked all around the city park, and hundreds of people saw them. And they were about 13 feet high, which is distressing, because back in 1959, I wrote a book called The Mark of the Beast. And in The Mark of the Beast, I had the devil coming down to earth in a UFO when the Christians go up. And I had the Antichrist stepping out of that UFO. He's 13 feet 6 inches. But that was 1959. Like I say, if you stay with the book, they may catch up with you, and they may not. It's a matter of time. Now, those things are there. The only question is, where do they come from? Now, Einstein said this. He said that you could be here, there could be a star here, and some intervening planet between you and the star, and he said the light rays that came out from this star would be bent by gravity, so that you might see something behind something because the light rays are bent around the object. And theoretically, that means this. That means if I'm standing here like this, and I can find some way to take these light rays behind me and bend them around me, you see what's behind me. That is, you wouldn't see me. So the question comes up with whoever this thing is, a fool in this thing, have they found a way to bend light rays? Now, there's all kinds of Kookville stuff mixed up with this stuff. I know that. There's a guy named Adamansky that said he was taken to Venus, you know, and fell in love with a Venusian woman, all this and that, and blood transfusion, I don't know, and little green men, all this stuff. There's a lot of cockeyed stuff always connect with truth. But there's some truth here somewhere. Now, that thing about bending those light rays. I've got a fellow in Canton, Ohio, who tells me he's been on a UFO. He said he's ridden it out to California. he said they're connected with Goodyear Rubber Company. That one fellow, you know what he sent me? A guy sent me a book about that thick and how to build a UFO. Blueprints. And I couldn't understand it, so I took it to an engineer and looked it over, and he said, when he looked over about 6 months, he said, it's right. It can be done. But he said, the trouble is this book doesn't tell you what material to make it out of, and if you don't have the right material, you couldn't make anything in that book. And here's what that book said. That book said, a UFO can come along like this and make a right turn like that at, say, 60,000 miles an hour. And the question is, how does it do it without slinging everybody, out the front end? and he said this, he said, the UFO was made so it's a wheel within a wheel. What he said. And this one wheel's like this, and this other wheel's inside like this. And so when this thing's going along, and the outer wheel makes the turn, the inner wheel is not rotating the same speed the same way, and slacks down and goes into reverse, and while the outside makes this turn, the inside makes this turn by putting the wheel inside the wheel. And that stuff's all diagram drawn out. Now, I'm not a physicist, and I'm not a mathematician, and I don't know about all this stuff, but I know one thing. I know if there's an answer to anything, I know where it is. It's going to be in here. It's going to be here every time. The trouble is, when you get the answer in here, it's going to be negative. And folks don't like negativism. They like it positive. People like to think things are getting better and better all the time. And every time you pick this book, it smashes some sacred cow. He goes mooing all over the pasture. And folks don't like it. But if there's any answer to this thing, it's going to be in here when you find it. Now, there's one more thing. Back in World War II, there was a ship called the Uss Eldridge. And I forget the exact name of that thing. I got it written down in my notes. They have something like a CCPA, or it's not a certified public accountant, but it's some initial like that. And I just talked to a guy in the Merchant Marine about 4 months ago about the nomenclature on that ship. And he said that ship is a large merchant vessel for carrying material with, but it's equipped with guns. And sometimes it's disguised as a merchant marine when it's set up as a destroyer. USS Eldridge in World War II was taken out in the North Atlantic for a couple of months to carry on experiments with light bending rays. You see, the thing is, as long as you watch television, you'll never know anything, because that's the bubble tube, and it'll turn you into a bubblehead if you keep watching it, because those people all aim in a certain direction. You see, they're religious. They have this religious creed, no gun and that kind of thing, and queers raising your kids and all that. And as long as you watch that TV, you can't get the news. If you want to get the news, it's always found in some little old obscure paperback that no reputable publishing company would fool with when you find it. And this USS Eldridge goes out. When it comes back, about a third of the crew gets Section 8s. They discharge them for being crazy. About a third more of the crew gets out of the Navy and doesn't ever come back again. About a third more of the crew dies or heart attacks or gets shot or something goes wrong. Everybody just falls to pieces. And there's a definitive book on it written that you can buy now, and with a guy with all the documented evidence on it. And the documented evidence is that films were made and films were shown to the high brass in the Navy, and they saw them, and they saw the ship disappear. That is, a sister ship sails alongside and takes photographs, and it goes in and out of the camera. But that ain't the worst of it. The rank and file, what we call the dog face, the GI, the man in ranks. In Vietnam, they call them grunts. World War I, they call them doughboys. World War II, we call them dog face. In Vietnam, they call them grunts. And they're gyrenes in the Marines, you know, and they have names for those things. But the fellow down in ranks always seems to be better informed than the news media for some reason. And when the Marines came out of the Chosin Reservoir in Korea back in the 50s someplace and were retreating at about 30 below zero and fighting their way back, they sang. And the song said something about the Chinese met us at Ching Rang Yung Ri and now know the meaning of USMC. So put back your pack on. Our next stop is Saigon. So cheer up, my lads. You know, bless them all. Of course, those aren't exactly the words. But so he says, put back your pack on. Listen, your next stop is Saigon. You know when they sang that? 1951. But what's a Marine in Korea in 1951 doing singing, put back your pack on, your next stop is Saigon? Why, you didn't know there was any war in Saigon about the time of Kennedy, up in the 60s. Scuttlebutt and the Marine down the road, he got that thing going in 51. Now, you get out in the USS Eldridge, and the crew comes up with this. The crew says the fellow's caught in the green. He's caught in the round. You have to hug him to bring back. It's called getting in the burns. Some of them burn clean out. They got all kinds of expressions for it. They knew what was going on that ship. And some of those fellows, when they lost their minds, it was because they said they walk along like this, look down at their feet, and there'd be nothing on their feet but water. They're walking on the deck, and they don't see the deck. I said, you come down the deck, and a guy would suddenly be right in front of you, and he'd disappear like that. And when he'd come to, he'd be like this, or like this. And you'd have to go up and give him artificial respiration to get him going again. That was a wild trip, man. And they're fooling with this stuff. They don't know how to control it. And they just quit fooling with it unless it went off someplace else and they got working with it someplace else. But they were fooling with bending light rays, what they're fooling with. Now, whether they ever perfected the thing or not, but that shows you the nature of this thing. All right, now having said that, the question comes up, where did they come from, and what are they doing here? Now, the standard TV presentation is that if they're true, and the standard scientific presentation is if they're true, then they're humanoids. They're superhumans from outer space, and they've come to help you. You know, and you're in danger of blowing your planet up with a nuclear bomb, which may affect the whole solar system. So they're being higher, superior beings who know about how to have peace. You know, they've come to help you and show you how not to have war anymore. See, that's the standard Gaft Act. Now, the only three places those things had come from, they're extraterrestrial. That means off the globe. Or they're terrestrial, they're on the globe, or they're intraterrestrial, they're under the globe. So it's a high-class word for saying above ground, on ground, underground. So it's got to be one of them places. Now, I get literature. Boy, do I get literature. People send me everything. They think I'm going to print it in the bulletin. I don't, but if I print everything we print in the bulletin, you talk about a cult. It'd be the wildest thing you ever saw in your life, man. I mean, I get documented evidence that prove that Hitler's down the South Pole making UFOs, man. I mean, just piles of it. I've got pictures there of people that made it with gorillas and got a half gorilla, half man, you know, all kind of wild stuff. I got one guy named Peter Beater from Washington, D.C., and he's really got it going. He had the Russians fought the Australians on the moon back in 1970, and he has all the Russians now are all Christians. They're not Bolsheviks. Jim Jones was kidnapped out of Guyana and taken over to Palestine, dumped out of a plane at 12. I got some wild stuff, man. Well, the stuff I've got, Rockefeller's a clone. Yeah, they killed Rockefeller, made a clone of him. And Carter and his wife are clones. They were killed back in the 1970s, and they got clones running around. Now, you know, if you printed that, but I ain't going to print that mess. But anyway, you get all this stuff, and I got all this stuff these UFOs come from. Some of them think it's the Germans playing rockets, you know. I mean, one fellow said he heard these things talk, and they said they were tall and wore gray uniforms and talked in guttural like German, you know, which would kind of upset you, you know, if you went by a UFO and the guy said, "Big Gates." But I don't believe that. I don't think they're made on Earth. You say you think they come out of space? No, I don't think that either. I think they come downstairs. I'm taking the negative view. You say, why? All right, I've got 47 books at home on UFOs, 47 of them. Out of 47 of them, 40 of them are professedly encounters with the occupants. And some of the fellows say they're little green men. Some say they're tall gray men. Some say they're not men, they have scales. Some say they have eyes and mouths but no nose. Some say they have a nose like a carrot and eyes but no mouth. Some of them say they have eyes and mouth and nose but no ears. Now, they're all kinds. You get everything in the world in these things. Some of them say they stop and draw electricity from power plants. Some of them say they're over this water and siphon this water up, all kinds of stuff. Now, I know nobody's done that. I don't believe everything I read. But when you finish reading all that stuff, there's one impression that's indelible you get. These things, whatever they are, they're not humanoids, and they're not angels. These things have a mechanical, animalistic thing to them. It's a combination of something that's animal and mechanical, like your science fiction monsters. These things, we got two guys down in Pascagoula that got taken on one time. They had punctured them, gave them blood tests. When they got back off them after they had that one visit, one fellow's wristwatch would never work after that. His name was Parker. His wristwatch would never work after being on that thing. And they got in that thing, and they said these things had insignia on them, and they said that was the insignia. But man, that's the insignia of the HEW, Health Education Welfare Department. That's what you find on the lapel of all the medics in the Medic Corps. You don't think it's a flying serpent. Don't you know what that serpent is? That's a Scapules, the god of healing. That's the snake god that old Socrates sacrificed to before he took the hemlock. Imagine the United States Army, Navy, and Marine Corps parading that thing around. Well, take your Bible and turn to Leviticus chapter 20 and the book of Jude. Leviticus chapter 20 and Jude. Did it ever strike you kind of peculiar that when David got those Syrian horses, he had to hamstring them, hough them, H-O-U-G-H, cut the hamstrings, the back of the legs? Did it ever occur to you kind of, the Lord told Solomon, don't you go down to Egypt to get horses? Did it ever occur to you kind of funny back in the days of Noah when God drowned that bunch out, he drowned all the animals with them? All right, Jude. Here's Jude. Jude, verse 7, even to Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication, underline it, and going after strange flesh, other flesh, different kind of flesh. I'll set forth an example. All right, Leviticus 20, verse 18. If a man lie with mankind as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed abomination, they shall surely be put to death, their blood shall be upon them. Kill them. What the Old Testament says, do to a queer, kill him. If he's a fruit, if he's a fairy, if he's a faggot, kill him. You know, if you're a sex pervert, you better be glad you're not under the law. The law says kill him. You say, why? If you don't, they kill you. That's why. All right, now look at verse 15 and 16. Now look at that. 15 and 16. Now that's called bestiality and abnormal psychology. You say, would people do things like that? Look at verse 22 and 23. They sure did. 22 and 23. That's why God killed them people. That's why God told that Jew, when you get in there, you kill a man, woman, suckling, sheep, and ass. You kill the animals and kill the kids. And folks read that, oh, what a terrible book is the Bible. Oh, what a bloody book. Oh, murder, torture. Well, this book, yeah, you ain't got a brain in your head either, do you? The Lord said, you better kill that bunch, because if you don't, they're going to get you killed. Now, that stuff went on back in those days. Now, take your time and turn to Genesis chapter 6. Look what happens when this flood comes. Genesis chapter 6. I'm in that Beauty and the Beast. Did you ever wonder about that? Old King Kong and his girlfriend. Did you ever notice in Revelation chapter 17 when he has that vision about that woman, she's riding a beast? Did you notice that thing over there in Revelation chapter 17? That's why it's the werewolf and this girl and the mummy and this girl and King Kong and this girl. It's always set up like that. You won't get ahead of here. Hollywood won't get ahead of this book. They'll catch up with it once in a while, but not often. All right, Genesis chapter 6, verse 2. The Son of God saw the daughters of men, they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days. Now look out. And also after that. After when? After those days. When the sons of God came to the daughters of men, they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw the wickedness of man, it was great upon the earth. Verse 7. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and creeping thing and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. Verse 13. The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Verse 2. Now in the Old Testament, now I'm guessing from here on, not too sure about what I'm going to say, but in the Old Testament, you had angelic beings that came down to this earth. And when they came down this earth, they left their first estate. And when they came down, they went not only to women, but to strange flesh. And it happened before the flood, and it happened after the flood. And God said, drown them out and get them animals with them. The passage you read over there in Leviticus said, kill the woman, kill the man, and kill the beast. That's what it said. Now the survival of that are found in Greek and Roman mythology. When you pick up Greek and Roman mythology, you keep finding this god that becomes an animal, or goes an animal, or she's changed an animal, or comes back to a person. You find that stuff over and over again. And from that you get these stories about centaurs. They're half horse and half man. And satyrs, they're half goat and half man. You get a monster thing going there like unicorns and stuff, animals that no longer exist. And these dumb, stupid college professors, and they're some of the dumbest people that face this earth, they believe in Brontosaurus and Diplodocus and Stegosaurus and Triceratops and all that stuff, but don't believe in that. They believe in monsters that are just as fictitious and mythical as the ones I'm talking about, but the ones I'm talking about, there's more basis for believing them than believing the other. Now what that means is, as it was in the days of Noah, and as it was in the days of Lot, so shall it be in the day of the Son of Man. Which means this stuff's going to happen again. And if you were to ask me where these things are from, and I'm just guessing now, I don't teach this as doctrine because there's not enough solid here you can nail it down with. If I was going to guess where these things are from, and I'm guessing, I'd guess these things come from before the flood. And these things are some kind of mutants, just like the word is used, a mutation. Some kind of twisted, perverted, monstrous type of creation that gets off this earth when the water comes and then returns, or else goes down into this earth when the water comes and then comes up. And if I was going to guess where they'd come from, I'd guess, and I'm just guessing now, see, I don't know this, I'd guess the Bermuda Triangle is just about as good a place you can get. And I'll close with this. Up in, I read the other day in Russia where they're talking about mining operation. The ship was screaming down there 900 feet